Hello, today we're going to talk about marketing research. This will be in chapter 10 if you're using the textbook for the class. The first thing we're going to talk about today is observation, and observation really is what it sounds like. It means looking at things, observing them. In our case, that might mean seeing how consumers behave in a store, or how they consume a product, how they use a product, how they dispose of a product, but actually watching them do it. There is a video that I linked in Canvas for you that is it's a TED Talk, and it talks about some really cool observation studies that were done. And the one that you can see on the screen here is using eye tracking software to see where people are looking, how quickly they can find things if you ask them to find a specific thing. So go ahead and watch this video. It's really interesting, and I think it will give you an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about some of these research projects. All right, and then, oops, I've got my pen turned on. Turn that off. It's not off. 1 second. Turn that off. Okay. The 5 steps of marketing research. In the book, these are what they're going to be. Define the objectives and research needs. Design the research. Collect the data. Analyze the data. Develop and implement an action plan. I want to challenge you to think of these in your own words. So the way that I do it in my head is, what is it we want to know and why? That would be the first step. How and where are we going to get the information? What does this information tell us? And what then do we do about it? So if we head over to our assignment coming up, I'm gonna grab us our assignment and put it over here. So after spring break, you guys will have the marketing research proposal. And I'm going to have you go through some of these steps. Since we're not actually going to do the full research project, I'm only having you go through the first couple of steps. So you're going to do the first 2 steps, define your objectives and research needs, design the research, and then I'm going to ask you, and this is actually part of step 2, where would you propose getting the data to answer your question? And I'm going to coach you a little bit on what your research question should be. Your research question needs to be centered around, is there enough demand and revenue to pursue this course of action? And the course of action is the growth strategy you propose in Project 3. And there are multiple ways to ask this. So, will my target market buy this? How much will they pay for it? Will enough people buy this that it is worth the investment? How much is the investment to make this work? So on and so forth. And then figure out what kind of data you need to answer your research question. Is there available secondary data? On and on and on. We're going to go over some of this stuff in the lecture. But if we went to back to your growth strategies that we've talked about a couple times now. They're going to be down at, I'm losing my mouse, down at the bottom now probably. So your growth strategies. These are, again, are the ones that we did really, really early in class. You've probably changed them now, but these I'm just going to use as some examples. So if you are shipped and you've decided to launch a new product into your present market and you're going to get into party planning and event planning, something to know would be, how do people go about party planning? How would Shipt step in to meet a need in that space? And so you might before COVID have seen different steps to party planning than we do now. So now maybe there's more of a space for Shipt now that people are not as much in stores, but they're getting back to some normal life. But now they've used Shipt and now they don't want to go to the store, so maybe they want Shipt to do some of this party planning for them. What does that look like? How would people use that? Would they use it? Would they pay for it? How do you find some of this information? You can ask consumers if someone else is doing it, like Gordon Food Service. maybe look at how they're doing it. What market are they serving? And so on and so forth. So there's all kinds of information out there. First, start with the information that's already been gathered by someone else or you. And then if there's still information missing, that's where you propose gathering new information. And so that's what we're going to be doing with this part of the project. I will head us back into the PowerPoint. Okay, so you are proposing a growth strategy. What do we want to know about whether this will work or not? Where are we going to get that information? Go get the information. You're not actually doing that, but you're proposing these first two steps. Once we have the information, what does it tell us? And then what do we do about it? So that's the marketing research process kind of boiled down into why we are doing this. There are some different levels and different types of research. I'm going to step a little bit out of the actual practical side of this now, because a lot of market research that is done by academics who are more interested in the theory and how people's brains work, rather than companies who want to know how to make more money by knowing how consumers' brains work and how they do things. So there are kind of two sides to this. There's the academic side, and then there's the practitioner side, and then there's actually also the strategy side. So for descriptive research, we are really just kind of finding factual statements. So we're just describing the situation. For example, if we wanted to know how many people buy on this day of the week, we could count them up. This many people bought on this day of the week. How many people go Christmas shopping? How many of those people are men? How many people are women? So that's really just like stating the facts. You will get some of this from scanner data. I have a video on scanner data that will help you kind of understand what it is a little bit. But basically, if you go to Meijer or Walmart or anywhere else and you have a loyalty card, they keep track of what you buy, how often you buy it, whether you buy something again, and they use that information to give you coupons, yes, but they're using that information to inform what they should stock in the store, how often they should restock stuff in the store, whether they are running out of stock in the store, and they may also recommend other things based on the things that you buy, so on and so forth. So they're using that information for a lot of reasons, and they can take that information and they can say, we sold this much of this product during this season. End of story. If we go to the next step, diagnostic, we can try to explain things. We can say, okay, well, we could use some of our descriptive data to say, okay, we sold this much during this time of the year. We think that's because of this reason, this reason, this reason, and try to explain things rather than just stating fact. We're trying to kind of figure out how things are sort of working. Predictive data is used, or predictive research is used to try to make predictions based on the data that we have. So if I sold this many candy bars during Valentine's Day, I think that I can sell this many next Valentine's Day or on Easter or on whatever. Or if we have the store arranged this way, we sell more, versus if we have this store arranged this way, we don't sell as much. So if we arrange the store this way on these days, so you kind of get what I'm doing. So there's kind of this descriptive, this is what exists. Then there's kind of trying to explain why. And then there's also predicting what you can make happen by making some of these changes. We've got primary and secondary data. No, well, that's not helpful. I didn't give you a definition. So primary data is data that you have collected for this specific purpose to answer this specific question. Okay? You are collecting it for these reasons. Secondary data is data that has been collected either by someone else or by you for other reasons that you can still use now to kind of inform what you're doing. So primary is very, very focused on this specific research question, and you're gathering it now to answer. Secondary is data that's already out there. So if we go through this list, we could look at in-home personal interviews. Well, that's happening right now, and we probably have some sort of questions that are intending to answer some question that we have. Mail panel surveys tend to be, they can be both, depending. If we're putting the questions in now to answer a current problem, then that would be primary. But if it is data that is just gathered and then we purchase the panel survey, then that would be secondary. Internal corporate information is going to be secondary. We're gathering it now, but we really just gather it. And we use it when it becomes helpful. Scanner data is secondary. Telephone interviews, if we're doing them right now, are primary. If we did them in the past and now we're going back to the data, seeing if it can help us out, then it's secondary. So I think the book goes through these, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Here are the definitions. So secondary data are pieces of information that have already been collected from other sources or yourself in the past and are usually readily available. Primary data are data collected to address specific research needs in the now. A sample is a group of customers who represent the customers of interest in a research study. This is a hypothetical fast food survey. The book will go into a little bit more detail on the different types of questions that you can ask. Undergraduate students tend to really want to ask categorical questions. Those are not as useful in research as what we call continuous variables, but things that are kind of like a range of something will be easier for us to handle when it comes to research versus something that's a category. So for example, these in the last month, how many times have you been to McDonald's? Never. 1 to 2 times, 3 to 4 times, more than 5 times. If I would have just asked in the last month, how many times have you been to McDonald's, and then left a box where somebody could just enter a number, I can get any range of numbers versus forcing people into categories. You lose information when you do the category approach, whereas if you give somebody the option to put whatever number they want, you can put them into categories after the fact. You just lose some flexibility if you force stuff into categories. Researchers do that because you could give somebody a box that says, in the last month, how many times have you been to McDonald's? And somebody will type Nebraska. Okay, that's not helpful. So the reason we try to force respondents into responses is to kind of clean up some of the mess a little bit because they don't pay attention. A categorical variable might also include something like gender, so male or female. That question is also being revisited now because we have kind of the issues with putting people into categories when they don't want to be put into categories, looking at the difficulties brought about by people's preferred pronouns, people's preferred gender, or gender identity, things like that. So you will tend to see a little bit more than just male or female as an option these days. So I'm not going to get into this a ton because there's an entire class on this, and if this stuff sounds fun to you, you really should take that class. I love it. It does have some statistics, but I hate math and I love statistics. So once it sinks in and you get it and you understand it and you can use it to answer some real questions, it's a lot more fun. This is, I don't know that this is from your guys' book, but this is the results from this study. So when we were asking people whether they cared the most about cleanliness, taste, and low price in their perceptions of Wendy's versus McDonald's, we can see that both are considered to be equally clean by our consumers. Taste is better at Wendy's and the price is better at McDonald's. So we can use that to make decisions as a company. So say we are McDonald's, maybe we want to work on our taste being perceived better by consumers. So that's how you would use that. I'm also going to talk about qualitative versus quantitative. And if you look at the words, qualitative sounds like quality, and then quantitative sounds like quantity. So qualitative is going to be more about words, and quantitative is going to be more about numbers. Okay, and I have some examples here. So qualitative research is going to be kind of descriptions, observations, interviews, focus groups, social media, where you're getting a lot of conversation with consumers. And on the quantitative side, you're going to get, like that survey that we just saw, you're going to get numbers that plug into things. You can also get qualitative data in a survey if you ask a question like, describe your experience with this. Yes, you can get words. Panels are also surveys in a lot of ways. Scanner data is going to be about numbers and quantities and counting, experiments as well. So this is kind of an easy, fun way to kind of put these two different types into different buckets. But it's a good idea to collect both kinds of data. So if you are doing a survey, it's a good idea to have stuff that is continuously measured on numbers, and then also a few open-ended responses where you can get a little more depth and a little more detail. This is an example of eye tracking, and our College of Business has recently gotten some eye tracking software and equipment, but we can't use it because COVID. So my vision is to have our consumer research lab and make a mock shopping area, put eye tracking devices on people, and run experiments. And this is something that undergraduates could help me do research on. So that's something that we would like to do once COVID is over. Scanner data, I described it a little bit before. This is where you've got the loyalty cards, where the stores are keeping track of what each individual purchaser is doing. Scanner data has been around since before loyalty cards and all of these databases. This is done basically through the barcodes on things. It's to help track inventory. It's to help keep track of whether you are losing product through what's called shrinkage, which is people stealing your stuff. So it started out more as like an inventory thing, but now marketers want to know who's buying stuff. Do they make repeat purchases? How long do they go between buying milk one time and another time? Does it matter if we make packaging bigger? Do they still go the same amount of time, or do they wait longer? Do we want them to come back sooner? All kinds of stuff. There is a video that you can watch. This is actually a guy promoting his book, but it's a pretty cool story, so you can watch that, and I have linked that on Canvas for you. Very cool. Panel data and TV ratings. This guy talks about how Nielsen ratings are used to do TV ratings. Maybe not super relevant now because most people are using streaming, but it is an interesting concept. And then I've also linked a video regarding experimental research. This is the kind of research that I do. So it's hard for me to kind of package it and make it small enough for a small class. But the guy in this TED Talk, and I put the link here and I put the link on Canvas, describes some experiments. So if you, for your project, wanted to propose a survey or an observation or an experiment, you can go any way you would like to. Let me pull that up real quick. When you do your research proposal. You're also going to need to tell me what secondary data you're looking for. I think I have that in here. We'll revisit this real quick. Okay, so describe all of the sources of your data and what they would be used for, and design how you would collect some data, and tell me how you're going to do it. So if you're going to do observational research, don't just tell me we're going to observe people shopping. What are you looking for? What are you trying to get? Be pretty detailed with this. If you want to design an experiment to answer a question, to see if we do this, do customers do this? If we do it this way, do customers do this? Or you can do a survey, but you're going to actually need to put the survey together for me with the questions and the responses. So I will be around to help you with that. That's all I have for this video, so I will see you next time.